Welcome to today's Code for Crohn's webinar, an interview with Thritha, who is an IBD patient herself and secretary of TCCI Austin, which is UT Austin's community and Crohn's and Colitis initiative to create a supportive environment for all IBD patients on campus. They provide many opportunities to support patients as well and run many initiatives such as virtual support groups, fundraisers, and have several committees. My name is Sahasra, and I'm the founder and president of Code for Crohn's, which is an organization dedicated to using computer science and technology to help serve the Crohn's community globally. Our organization will be hosting webinars, workshops, coding competitions, running an ambassador program, virtual support groups, and running a blog to raise awareness about Crohn's disease through the usage of coding and tech. Follow us for more updates and visit our website, www.codeforcrohns.org, to learn more about opportunities for you to volunteer and support us. Thank you so much for joining us today, Thritha. Before we begin, could you please introduce yourself by mentioning your journey as an IBD warrior to our viewers, including your education, your background, a health update, and some facts about you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Thritha. Thank you for having me. Right now, I'm a sophomore at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm double majoring in biology and philosophy. I'm planning on going pre-med for now. I am from North Texas, from a South Asian background, and a little bit about my relationship with IBD. So my dad has always had issues with his stomach. He is undiagnosed, but what my doctors have told me it's genetic, but I have been diagnosed with Crohn's for around 8 years now. So that's my relation to IBD, why I've been so involved. And so medications I've been on include prednisone and Imuran, and right now I'm on Humira. So I've done a lot of research about these medications and about IBD in general. And also I've done a lot of experimentation with like Ayurvedic medications as well, things like that. So a lot of experimental things also. So a lot of things that I've done in relation to Crohn's. So some other facts about me, I guess, are that apart from just the diagnosis from Crohn's, is that I play cello, I love to watch a lot of movies, and I'm involved with a lot of IBD awareness on campus.
So what were the weeks leading up to your diagnosis of Crohn's disease like? What were your symptoms and the obstacles you faced? Were you aware of what IBD was before being diagnosed? And especially since you were diagnosed around the age of 11 at a really young age, how was navigating through IBD at that moment?
Yeah, so I always had a really weird relationship with what I was going through, especially when I was first diagnosed, because I didn't really know what IBD was, even though my dad I always knew that he had issues with his stomach. He would always get like frequent stomach aches, things like that, but no one would really talk about it. He would just sort of deal with it on its own. So when I was diagnosed, I didn't really know how to deal with my symptoms. I just thought it was, something that people generally went through and just kept it to themselves, right? So when it got really bad and I was telling my parents about it, that's when I realized that, oh, this is maybe more of a serious issue. And so then after doing a bunch of tests and talking to different doctors and things like that, that's when I got to know more about exactly what IBD was, specifically Crohn's, and how that affected my immune system, things like that. Yeah, so a very confusing time just because I had no idea what I was going into. And I think a lot of it also had to do with how little IBD is generally talked about when discussing disabilities and things like that. Usually it's like this, when you think of disability, you think of a lot more prevalent conditions, a lot more common things, like physical disabilities or just other more common disorders that you see in your day-to-day life. So it was a very interesting experience for me, to say the least.
So how has Crohn's disease affected your life, and what has your journey as a patient and advocate taught you?
Yeah, so Crohn's obviously has been a big change for me, mainly because of the medications that I'm on. Now I have to be a lot more aware of the things that I'm eating and side effects, things like that. Doing a lot more research, I think, has been one change that I've seen, like me taking the initiative to look into things on my own, not really just blindly trusting what the doctors say and what like advice people give, just taking the initiative to try and figure things out on my own as well. Um, but what my journey as a patient has taught me is that it's actually a very manageable disease. It's not some sort of big deal that everyone sort of takes a disability to be. I know when I was first diagnosed, I definitely thought that it was going to be something really big, really like life-changing, especially with like all being overwhelmed with like different medication names that are really large, hard to pronounce. You have no idea what they do. Um, so that was all like very overwhelming, but through the years I've realized that it really is very manageable as long as you know what works for you. And I've also learned that it's really important to be proactive about your symptoms and not to wait, because if you do just sort of like minimize what you're going through, your symptoms do snowball, and then eventually you're left in this really harmful situation that's harder to get out of than the earlier symptoms. So this is definitely something that you do have to be proactive about.
So there are a lot of stereotypes that South Asian IBD patients deal with. And what were some of the stereotypes you had to deal with, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so a little bit about what I was saying before relates to this question, I think, especially with being diagnosed with a disability, just putting a label to what you're going through can seem like a really big deal. And that's definitely something that I felt when I was first diagnosed. I remember a lot of my family members were acting like this was going to be something huge and life-changing, sort of like crushing almost. I remember my parents were really like sad about it and I didn't really know why. So I thought, "Oh, is this something that I should be sad about? Is this something that I should be really worried about?" So I think that is one thing. I don't really know if that's a South Asian stereotype per se, but just something that I wasn't prepared for. Just like the perception that I was going to like suffer a lot because of this label that was now put on me, if that makes sense. So I definitely thought that I was going to be like incapable of doing things. I remember like sitting in the doctor's office, like my parents talking to the doctor and me being like, "Oh, what's going on? Like, I don't know what like these big words are, these like the scans, like the imaging, things like that, results. I had no idea what they meant. Um, so those sort of like piled up into this big sort of stereotype that if I did have Crohn's, then I wasn't going to be able to live a normal life. So that's something that I had to deal with and get over, because that's definitely not the case. Um, so how I overcame that, I guess, is just it did take time, I think. I think when I started to sort of look into these things on my own, and take initiative to learn about what these results really meant or what these medications really did, that really helped sort of give me a different perspective, a more educated one on what was actually happening and going on in my body. So I think educating yourself is a great way to ease like any worries that you might have that can feel overwhelming at times.
So as a college student with Crohn's disease for around 8 years, how do you talk to friends or other people in your life about your chronic illness? And IBD is often referenced as a disease that cannot be seen with the naked eye. So how do you go about having conversations about your illness with loved ones that might not have prior knowledge about IBD? And so what are the most important things to know as a loved one about chronic illness and IBD in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, sort of how to talk to people about this illness when it's not something that everyone knows about, generally. I think for me, like, thankfully, the people around me are really understanding and really open to like learning more about what I'm going through and very understanding about that. Um, so I think it's best just to be open about what you're going through. I know that sometimes it can be hard to talk about your symptoms just because it's not something that seems like life threatening, right? It might seem like, oh, this is not a big deal, so I don't have to like tell anyone. But I think it's really important to recognize that the disease affects you mentally just as much as it does physically. And if you don't have anyone to talk about it, then it can really send you into like a hole, just mentally not wanting to do anything or being unmotivated to go out. Because food is such a big part of your day, whether you realize it or not. And if you have IBD, you're not able to eat food that's appetizing, or loss of appetite is also a very common symptom. So when you're going through small things like this, it can be really easy to just lose motivation to go out and about your day. So it really helps to have people to talk to about what you're going through. And I just think that it's important to realize that it's okay to talk to people about your symptoms, even if it's not the biggest thing that you might be going through. Sure, it's different from a lot of other disorders, but it is still something that's affecting you mentally and physically. So it's good to be open. And as a loved one of an IBD patient, I think it's also important to understand that there's a lot of stress and pressure that is put on Crohn's patients, IBD patients. And so just to be aware of that and a little bit more understanding in the way that you talk to them about symptoms that you might not physically see them happening because they're more hidden.
So let's talk about the adjustment of living at home with your family, managing your chronic illness, to moving to college and having to be more independent. So what was that journey like, and what are your suggestions for anyone out there having trouble adjusting to the move to college with Crohn's disease, or really IBD in general? What worked for you through the process and what didn't?
Yeah, so one thing that you definitely need to know when you're moving out is that you need to be prepared to cook. So it's good to have like 3 or 4 safe meals that you know you can always go to, and it helps for them to be easy and light. So you can really, like, after a long day, you can just come back and make something and it'll be good for your gut. Another thing is that it's good to look around the area that you're staying in and find restaurants that work for your digestive system, because you can't rely on fast food or really oily. You don't want to sort of risk that if you're going through like a flare or anything like that. So it's good to find places that you know that you can rely on if you don't have the chance to cook, or if you have to go out and eat with friends or something. It can really be helpful to have a couple of good options to eat out. So just knowing before you settle down, what are some good options for you to choose when you're going out to eat. Another big thing is that it's really important to have a set time for lunch planned, or for meals planned between your classes, because you don't want to be skipping meals, because that can also cause flares and be really bad for your digestive system in general. So just that balance between having a large workload and also planning time for your meals. It's important to prioritize your health.
So could you describe to our viewers what TCCI Austin is and the type of work you do through this platform? What is the mission of TCCI Austin, and how did you even begin working with this organization on campus? How has this organization changed your life as an IBD patient yourself?
Yeah, so TCCI Austin is a chapter at UT Austin. It is student run. And what we do is raise awareness for IBD through fundraising. We host speaker events, and it's just a really good way to meet people who understand what you're going through as an IBD patient. If that is something that you're dealing with, it's really nice to be around people who are aware of what you're going through and can understand, because that's something that I had trouble with growing up, because no one really knew what IBD was. So I was very hesitant to share what I was going through. But after coming here and realizing that TCCI was a thing here on campus, I realized that people really do know about IBD, and it's people like us who should be spreading the word and spreading awareness about things like this. But yeah, it's a great community.
So could you describe your thoughts on mental health and self-care as an IBD patient? How important is mental health for Crohn's patients, and what are your suggestions for managing emotional health while healing gut health? Could you explain more about how IBD affects more than just the gut?
Yeah, so like I was mentioning before, the disease or Crohn's, at least I can speak for, does affect you mentally as well as physically because it can be sort of a feedback loop. If your mental health is bad, then your physical health is bad, which makes your mental health bad because you're stressed about your physical health. So it's really easy to get into like a loop of that sort. Um, so mental health and self-care is definitely something that's really important when you're dealing with flares, especially. So one thing that I found that helps is finding one or two things that you really know calms you down and just letting yourself take breaks once in a while to sort of regroup and reassess your situation. For me, those things include like watching a movie, watching a show just for 20 minutes, spending some time on YouTube, or playing music, listening to music, taking a walk, reading, even just for 10 or 15 minutes. I think just taking some time to regroup and de-stress can be really important when you're feeling very overwhelmed with symptoms and how to deal with them.
So what are your recommendations for people who want to help support loved ones who are Crohn's patients but aren't sure how to? What is the most important resource that can effectively support a college student while dealing with their chronic illness?
So some ways to support IBD patients, in my opinion, are to be understanding about their symptoms, to not really probe if, just sort of assessing the situation and doing what they can to, I think, help their mental health, because physical health can only be controlled by the patient themselves, right? There's nothing you can do to really help someone if their body is not cooperating. So one thing that really does help is spending time with them to help cheer them up, I think would be a great way to start, just to get their mind off of what they're going through. And then some resources that can help, I think definitely are blogs, seminars, talks, things like that. I didn't really know that they help as much as they do, but it's a great way to feel heard and to feel appreciated by other people who are talking about what you're going through. So just looking out for resources like that can be a big help for someone who's going through IBD.
So as an IBD patient, who is your support system and which of your friends or maybe your loved ones really helped you throughout this healing process and throughout your journey, really?
Yeah, so my family has been a great support system. Obviously, they take care of everything medically related. Um, and they definitely do have my best interests in mind whenever they're making decisions about what to eat, where to go. They're very understanding about that. And then after coming to campus, my roommates have been a great support system. They also are very understanding about my symptoms. They don't probe more than when they realize that I'm sort of going through a flare, they sort of try to do what they can to help create a more positive mood. So that's really great. But yeah, I do have a great support system with my family and my friends.
So what do you hope to see in the world of IBD in the next couple of years? What are your thoughts on the importance of advocating for IBD and creating awareness specifically?
Yeah, so I think right now there is a lot of really great movements of awareness, that there are lots of really great movements of awareness that are going on. But I do think that you still have to be specifically looking for IBD awareness events in order to become more educated. So I think what I would really like to see is this happening, people hearing about IBD on their own without someone having to ask, oh, do you know what IBD is? This is what it is. It should be something that's sort of more commonly known than it is now. That is something that I would like to see.
So finally, what is your message to all Crohn's patients or in general IBD patients watching right now?
So I think that one thing that is really important to remember is that there are so many resources out there that you should actively look for. You shouldn't feel that that you're alone in what you're going through, because there are definitely other people out there who understand what you're going through, who have the same questions, the same concerns. So it can really help to look for blogs and talks, speeches, things like that, that will really help you come to terms with what you're going through.
Thank you so much, Thritha, for your time speaking with me today through Code for Crohn's webinar. Everyone watching, please like and share today's webinar video and subscribe to the Code for Crohn's channel to help expand our impact on the community. Thanks for watching.